Alright, it's time for Wildfire Insider, the show where we try to figure out what's going on in the world of wildfire across the western United States. And then I added western because we normally just look at California, but I believe there's some big fires going on in Washington and Oregon that we might also want to take a look at today. But I do believe the top story today is still going to be that Mosquito Fire. And this satellite imagery actually explains why I think this is going to be an even bigger story today than it was the last couple days. You notice those clouds clearing and some of that smoke starting to pick up. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at that, analyze that. We're going to look at what the conditions actually look like on the ground. Looks like there's a lot more activity than this time yesterday. We'll check out where the fire is, some of the recent numbers and updates, evacuation orders, warnings, and then we'll look at where the activity is on the fire, and then always the part of the video that really gives us a good idea of kind of a forecast for the fire, where it's going to go, how active it's going to be. We'll check out that weather forecast for today. But I think good place to start, actually, maybe just looking at the recent numbers on this. I'll make sure this is the most recent version of this. So it looks like we're up to almost 50,000 acres. Now I want to see how much that increased from yesterday. So I'm just going to check. I know I posted what the acreage was yesterday, about 48,509. I posted that 17 hours ago. So not all that much increase recently. Now, some of the reason behind that lack of increase in the fire might actually just be due to the fact that we had so many clouds overhead last night that when they tried to fly over the fire, it was difficult to find the new perimeter. So to kind of prove that, we can look at the actual perimeter here. What I always do is turn our most recent data on and off. Actually, it does look like they picked up a lot of that growth on the eastern and northeastern sides of the fire. Now, when we were looking at the wildfire forecast yesterday, we knew that the winds were going to be from the southwest, and that was going to try to push the fire towards the northeast. We also saw this activity going on the eastern side. This is also the section of the fire where there's the smallest amount of fire history. To see that, we can go to this map, and when we click on fire history, you notice there's this big pocket right here where nothing has burned in a very long time. The only recent burn scar is that 2006 Ralston fire, but 2006 is a pretty long time ago, so fuels have had plenty of time to regrow since then. So this was the area where we were expecting the largest amount of growth yesterday, although that northeastern section for sure seeing some growth as well because of those southwesterly winds try to push the fire in that direction. Now when we actually look at the Google Earth, it does look like most of our growth yesterday was in that section. Now if we want to actually zoom in here and see some of this growth, could just turn it on and off. Yeah, so fire advanced wasn't exceptional growth by any standards, or at least even on the standards of this fire. One way we can see that is we can actually click through every single day to kind of compare that growth we had yesterday with some of the growth we had early on in this fire when it was just absolutely taking off. So day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and day 6 right there. So definitely do notice that growth on the eastern side. Now where we've been holding well is around Forest Hill. Haven't seen any growth there recently, so clicking on and off today, you might not notice any change there because there is no change there. So that's where some of that good news comes in. Around where we have the largest amount of structures is where we haven't really seen that much activity on this fire recently. Just to show that, we'll look at the structures right here. It's those orange dots. It's taking a second to load up. Most of the structures are on the western side of this fire. It does look like we have a little activity popping up right there. I'm not sure if that's firing operations or if that's the wildfire itself, because I do know we have had some firing operations in this area. For example, we can click in there. We're actually almost there already. So I don't believe it was in the last 2 days. Let's So right there, you can see where the fire was, and then they did some firing operations just to bring it down to the Middle Fork American River and try to kind of tie in that side, take out some of these fuels so that when the fire really gets going again, it's not as active. And then this was also a pocket that we were very worried about because the fire was pushing up to where you see a lot of those orange dots, meaning a lot of those structures. But you notice not seeing any of those red stars around that side of the fire, meaning the activity there has calmed down significantly. Now where we see most of those red stars is on the eastern and northeastern side of the fire. I'd imagine that has to do with the winds. So turning on the winds, yeah, it looks like it's a little bit more of a southerly component today, so that makes sense why the northern edge especially is seeing more of that growth. Now with this fire history, now as of right now, it kind of looks like it's going into the 2013 American. I will say satellites aren't always completely accurate when it comes to fire activity. Sometimes it can pick up the heat that's in the smoke plume, and then it makes it look like the fire has grown more than it has. But we are just going to continue to watch this area to see how the Mosquito Fire interacts with the 2013 American Fire and to see if that actually did clear out enough fuels and potentially if a lot of those fuels have grown back enough that this fire will just be able to move through there and the burn scar really won't help us all that much. Now, I should just go back to the satellite imagery and actually this imagery right here, because this was the first thing that I actually looked at today when I was loading up some of the links that I knew I wanted to click on. And the first thing that I noticed was clear skies. That's something that we haven't seen for quite some time. We've had all of that moisture moving in from what was Hurricane K. You can actually see it's moving off to Nevada throughout the day today, and that's just leading to those clear skies over the Mosquito Fire. The reason that that's important is because the last 2 days we almost had like a little protective barrier over the Mosquito Fire. We had all that cloud cover that reduces the amount of sunlight that comes into the fire, which reduces your daytime heating, which reduces your temperatures, which is good for fire. Or it's bad for fire, meaning it's good for people trying to put out fire. And then all that cloud cover also increased our relative humidity, brought some moisture into our finer fuels, and that slowed down growth as well. So seeing all that cloud cover clear out, my first kind of inclination, I think that's the right word to use, is that today is going to be much more active than the last couple of days. But it's also just going to kind of test all the progress that we have made on this fire over the last few days and to see if a lot of those lines that have been put in will actually be holding. But right there, I think that is the image of the day. That just indicates how much the conditions are going to be changing compared to the last couple of days. Now, the other part of that is when your temperatures don't heat up as much because you all have all that cloud cover, then you actually get less winds as well. And then less wind means the fire is going to spread less, but then it also means it's going to clear out the smoke less. So the last few days as well, we've also just had smoke sitting over this fire, and then that's almost been another little protective layer with those clouds, keeping temperatures lower, relative humidity higher, and our winds calmer. So it's almost been like a positive feedback loop of the fire kind of moderating itself the last couple days. But I would predict, just based on this imagery alone, that moderating effect will not be in store today, and we're actually going to see some more growth. So the big question there on growth is actually how hot and dry we're going to get. When we were looking at all this information yesterday, it looked like this whole week was going to be below average temperatures and still some decent moisture hanging around. So let's see if that is still the case. Let's hope that's still the case. Regardless, we're not going to be anywhere near the triple-digit temperatures and that heat wave that we had over the week when this fire was really taking off. So I don't even need to look at any weather models to tell you that it won't be as bad as we were when the Mosquito Fire was just going absolutely crazy. But looking at it right now, 11:30 a.m., we're up to about 74, 75 degrees. Relative humidity still in the high 30s, so that's some good news right there. This is a little more worrisome than yesterday, although it's still not that bad. Some gusts up to 14 miles per hour. So that's windier than we were yesterday. And then typically as you continue to heat up into the afternoon, those wind gusts will continue to increase. So I think I'll be watching the winds closely throughout the day today. Let's see how warm we're expected to get. So let's go to temperature here. And this is, I believe I put this right over the lat lawn of where the Mosquito Fire is. So let's click through here. 2 p.m., 75 degrees. And then 5 p.m., 73 degrees. So it doesn't actually, the forecast models aren't saying we're going to get all that much warmer. So that's some good news right there. And not all that much drier either. Around 2 p.m. looks like we're about 28%. So it's drier than we were yesterday, which makes sense because we're seeing all that moisture move into Nevada. We can just show that again, all that moisture moving into Nevada right there. But not nearly as bad as when we were in the triple digits and then triple digit temperatures, and then we had relative humidity in the low teens. Now I also want to see if we have any chances for thunderstorm activity, because that was the big question mark yesterday. Overall, I'd say thunderstorms were a good thing for us yesterday. Brought some moisture back into the fuels. I think it even dropped some light rain. That was one of my favorite Twitter posts yesterday. I said potentially some light rain over the Mosquito Fire. Can anyone confirm? And then just a bunch of people were sending in photos and videos of rain around the Mosquito Fire area, which was just great to see. And that's kind of the idea that I have for these Wildfire Insider videos, is that we're all kind of trying to figure out the information together. So if you know of any links that I haven't shown, or you have any information on the ground, please let me know in the live chat, and then I'll be able to bring that into this video, and then everybody will be able to know. But just looking at the forecast model for thunderstorm activity, still have some going on in the southern Sierra, but not nearly as much around Lake Tahoe today. And then it just kind of looks like it moves into Nevada. So don't think thunderstorms are going to be a big part of our wildfire story today. Now, one way we can confirm that is by going to In-sid-er. First, we could look at personnel. That looks like it's up from yesterday. Curious to see what it was yesterday. Said it was 2,397. And then right here, looks like we're up to 2,675 personnel on this fire. Significant events, fire behavior moderated after midnight Monday with cooler temperatures, high relative humidity recovery, and the inversion layer. So, good conditions overnight. That was all that moisture that we had over the fire. Just kept those conditions nice and calm for us. Now, if we look at weather concerns for today, I have, just looking at the imagery we've looked at so far, before we even read that, I have a good feeling they're going to talk about the fact that with clearing skies, they're expecting more activity throughout the day today. But we'll just see exactly what they're saying, because temperature-wise and relative humidity-wise, based on those forecast models, those aren't looking all that bad. So I'd say that's pretty good. The one thing, sorry to be jumping around so much, that's kind of how my brain works. But looking at the winds later today, yeah, it does look like it'll be a little bit windier than yesterday. Expecting some gusts up to 26 miles per hour. Again, sometimes that's a little misleading because that means your sustained winds are about 5 to 10 miles per hour. But it is sometimes those gusts that could pick up burning embers and lead to new spot fires. And then it does look like it has that same old southwesterly flow that we've seen over the last few days. So just based on that, expecting the largest amount of growth to be on this northeastern section of the fire. How that works, your winds come through here and basically just take those flames, push them forward. It can also pick up little burning embers and create little spot fires out ahead of the major blaze. And that can also jump over containment lines. So it'll also be interesting to see where some containment lines are on this fire, and we can look at that next. So Tuesday, an incoming weak weather system will bring slightly stronger southwest winds. That's what we just looked at. That will bring in drier air aloft. They should help to break the inversion earlier on Tuesday. So that's usually bad news for wildfires. When you break through your inversion, it allows the fire to just increase in activity. And then southwest ridgetop winds will be 6 to 12 with gusts up to 18. High temperatures will be in the 70s to lower 80s, so not too hot. and relative humidity 25 to 30%. Now when I say not too hot, it's kind of good to put that into perspective. One thing, my research that I've done at San Jose State for my master's in meteorology, where I've used machine learning to look at extreme wildfire days, it looked like there was a threshold of about 75 to 76 degrees, where above that, you can get that extreme wildfire activity. Below that, you see very few extreme wildfire days, which I defined as more than 10,000 acres burned in a day. So looks like we're actually kind of below that threshold. So I'm just looking at temperature, I wouldn't expect any huge activity throughout the day today. And then also, when it comes to relative humidity, the threshold I found was 17%, and it looks like we're well above that today. So I'm not expecting a 10,000 acres burn day today, although I am expecting more growth than the last couple days. But I also just want to put that temperature into perspective. I don't like this model. We'll go with it. So right there, that's around this afternoon, and you notice the whole state of California looks blue. That represents below average temperatures throughout the day today. So if our temperature above the Mosquito Fire is supposed to be 80 degrees today, looks like we're maybe 5 below that. So we're going to be about 75 degrees today. Then let's take a look at tomorrow. Looks like another below average day for all of California. Let's just keep going into the forecast, see if our good luck continues. Thursday, below average conditions. Friday, below average conditions again. So that's where a lot of good news comes in for not only the Mosquito Fire, but I'd say the entire state of California. Over the next 5 days, we look like we have below average temperatures. And then if we look at the overall snapshot of 6 to 10 days out, below average temperatures expected again. So good news coming in for the Mosquito Fire and just fire danger in California overall. It's not a guarantee. For example, you still can get some big fires when you have cooler temperatures, but it's at least a lot better than that heat wave that we just had where we're in the triple digits. Then we can look at 8 to 14 days out. Looks like then we're trending back towards above average conditions. So we'll enjoy this little downtime while we have it, because it doesn't look like it's going to last forever. But over the next 10 days, does look like we're a lot better than we have been recently. So we looked at that. We looked at the smoke imagery, some activity picking up right now because we have clear skies. We looked at the weather forecast. Oh, one thing I didn't show yet was the percent containment. So that number has increased. We're up to 18% contained. And I want to actually see where that containment is. So let's go to maps right here. And sometimes these maps take a while to load. So I might just click on it and then click away and talk about something else. Let's see. Yeah, we'll let that load and we'll go back to this map real quick. Just because if you're just joining the live chat, I think this sums things up. We're expecting those stronger southwesterly winds throughout the day today. So I see somebody commented, how close is the fire to Alta exit on Highway 80? Let's actually check it out. We got a little time while our maps are loading up. Let's check out Alta exit. Not sure if this can work. How about just Highway 80? Yeah, it doesn't really look like. Okay, so if that's what we're talking about, 80 is way over here. Our fire is over here. I think this is what we're trying to figure out here. Fire is way over here, 80 is way over here. And if we look at where the fire is actually active, it's more on this eastern side. So, I mean, I'm going to keep an eye on these little red dots that we see right here around south of Forest Hill throughout the day today. But again, those might just be firing operations that happened. If anybody knows, let me know in the live chat. But this whole kind of western side of the fire is looking very good right now when it comes to hotspot activity. And then also when it comes to winds with the southwesterly flow, that's going to try to push the fire towards the northeast today. And the worst winds that we would have if we wanted this fire to go west would be easterly winds. And that's not what we have throughout the day today. So that's some good news right there. Now let's see if our map loaded up. Looks like it did. So we can check out where we gained some containment on this fire. So this is also another reason that I'm not too worried about the fire going west all that much, is because you look at how much black line we have around this western side of the fire, and then how much completed dozer line we have around the Forest Hill area, which is shown with those little black X lines that you see in there. There's a whole bunch, but it is going to be interesting to see what happens in here, because that is where we're seeing a little activity, but it, again, might actually just be due to firing operations. So southern end looks like that is looking terrific, which is great news, because remember, it wasn't too long ago that was the area that we were the most worried about because of all these structures that were in here and how close the fire was getting to all those structures. Right now, seeing a lot of black line around there, so that looks good. We're also not seeing any of those red dots around there, which means that activity looks like it's calmed down in that area. Now, on this eastern side, this is where we're expecting to see that growth throughout the day today, and this northeastern side especially, just based on the direction that the winds are going to be going. So let's see if we have any containment up there. I'd be surprised if we do. So we do have this nice line right here. That's very interesting. So I believe this finger that's coming out from the fire was due to firing operations. So them actually, I've said firing operations a lot. I should probably define terms when I use them. That means that the personnel, especially when conditions are more favorable, like when it's not the peak heat and dryness in the afternoon, they'll actually put fire on the ground to try to clear out some of the fuels. So then if the fire were to get into that area, there's no more fuels for it to burn through. So then it kind of just stops in its tracks. Now the other thing that it looks like they've done is all these black X's right here. Looks like they've completed a huge dozer line going all the way up here. So that looks like they're preparing for the worst case scenario, where if this fire were to just get really kicked up by those southwesterly winds that we could be having or will be having throughout the day today, and then possibly even the next few days as well, what they're thinking is that they'll at least have a little pocket where they can contain this fire, at least almost kind of like keep it just inside this little barrier right here, and keep it from jumping over what looks to be, and not seeing any road designations around there. But on this whole eastern side, just zooming out, not seeing any black line around here, which isn't exactly surprising, because I'd imagine throughout much of this fire this is kind of just a guess right here, but I'd imagine when they were planning on where to put resources, I'd imagine their first priority was around this western side, because that's where we have the largest amount of structures. So yeah, it makes sense that there's not as much containment over here. It's also very steep, rugged terrain. That's something that we can look in. I'm just going to zoom into a random part of this fire, and you can see how steep this terrain is in here. I wouldn't even imagine it'd be possible to get dozers to be putting in lines right here. What I do know is that they have been flying some aircraft over here. The very large air tankers have been dropping some retardant around here, because yeah, I couldn't imagine trying to get a crew in here to be putting in lines right here. So let's come back out, and I see someone says can't wait to get home to Georgetown. I'd say that's also where there's some good news. Let's check out how Georgetown's doing. So let's come up like that. Make sure we're oriented north. So Georgetown, way over here, and the fire way over here. And as I've been talking about throughout this live stream, not sure if you're just joining in, but a lot of our growth and activity has been on this eastern side of the fire. Just looking at that growth we had recently, yeah, showing up on the eastern side. The whole section right here, I'll click off today. You notice no change, or I said eastern, I meant to say western. No change on that western side. What about yesterday? No change. September 11th, no change. September 10th, maybe a little change right there. But in the last 3 days, we've had almost no growth towards Georgetown. So that's where some great news is, and then also just not seeing any of that heat activity around there either. So I'd say things are looking very good in that department. So overall, if you're just joining the live stream, I think this is, let's stop it and reload it to see what it looks like. This is going to be a 3-hour time lapse. Have I heard anything about the Sequoia Grove by Forest Hill? Haven't heard anything about the Sequoia Grove by Forest Hill, but if we do zoom into Forest Hill, we haven't had any growth there in the last few days. It's pretty much just stopped in its tracks right there. Does look like we have a little activity down here where you see those red dots, but again, those might just be firing operations, so I can't actually confirm what's going on there. All I can confirm is Forest Hill, I would say, is looking great right now. We not only haven't seen much growth there recently, but we were just looking at this map, and we have completed a lot of dozer lines around that area. So yeah, even though the line is still showing up as red there, which means uncontained, I'd say that's a spot that I'd imagine we're going to start to see pop into that contained category pretty soon here. So just coming back here, if you're just joining the live stream, this I think sums up all the most important information that we've been talking about for the Mosquito Fire. You notice how different this looks from the last 3 days that we've been following the Mosquito Fire. Mosquito Fire the last 3 days has been covered in the clouds from Hurricane K. It's been covered in its own smoke because the winds have been remaining calm and we haven't had all that much warm temperatures in the afternoon to kick up those winds. But today, those clouds, you can actually see them moving off into Nevada. And then because those clear skies are going to allow the inversion to lift earlier in the day, which is kind of just a sciencey way of saying we're going to see more fire activity this afternoon, most likely. And actually, I'd say it's safe to say that because this is already more activity than we've been seeing over the last few days. Now, with that being said, we took a good look at the weather forecast today, and while the winds will be a little bit stronger and from the southwest, which will try to push this fire towards the northeast, that is the direction we're forecasting this fire to go, temperature-wise, we're actually below average. And then when it comes to humidity, we're going to be above that threshold where you get extreme fire growth. That threshold is around 17%. And today's low relative humidity, right there, the model is showing 28%. But then overall, not expecting to get into the teens today. So that's some good news. And then we also looked at some other good news. Throughout this entire week, looks like California has below average temperatures. And then even in the extended forecast, 6 to 10 days out, California has below average temperatures. So overall, we are looking, there's good news and bad news on the Mosquito Fire. I'll put it that way. The good news is that the heat wave has officially ended. We're not in those triple digits anymore, and we have below average temperatures, most likely for the next 10 days. We also have a decent amount of humidity still over the fire, so it's not exceptionally dry. The bad news is the fuels are still exceptionally dry, and then we have clear skies today, which is going to allow the fire to increase in activity a lot more than it has the last couple days. It looks like somebody said, I don't hear much about efforts to stop spread east to Tahoe. Is there a plan to bring in more aircraft to fight the eastern spread? So one thing that we can do here is zoom out a little bit. And let's actually just measure the distance to Tahoe right now. So distance, let's take, looks like the southern end of the fire is the closest. And let's go to Lake Tahoe. About 28 miles away as of right now. Then if we come to this map, And we'll go right above it, and we'll orient it towards north. You notice there was some eastern growth yesterday, but not very much. So if we were to just kind of zoom out there and look at Tahoe, there's a lot of distance between the Mosquito Fire and Tahoe. 28 miles to be exact. And the last few days, we really haven't been seeing that much growth on this fire. Now, with that being said, we have clear skies today, so our wildfire activity most likely will be larger than the last couple of days, but you can very well guarantee that all the resources on this fire, which we looked at, it's over 2,800 personnel, you know that they're going to do everything they can to stop this fire before it moves too far east. But right now, I wouldn't really say Tahoe is one of my concerns. Mainly just saying that because with this fire, we have below average temperatures for the next 10 days. There's still going to be some activity on it. The fuels are still exceptionally dry. We're still going to have some growth. But I'm not seeing anything, at least in the forecast right now, that tells me extreme fire days expected in the days ahead. So again, I'm always only as good as the information that I have to work with. But as of right now, all of the different factors that we've been looking at so far, it doesn't look like we're going to see any of those extreme wildfire days as we move forward. Now, I think where we will see that growth throughout the day today, though, on the Mosquito Fire is especially on this northeastern section, because we're going to have those stronger southwesterly winds. And with those clear skies, I would say it's going to be more active than the last few days. So I think the overall synopsis for the Mosquito Fire is a bit nuanced. I'm saying I'm not expecting more than 10,000 acres burned per day in any of the next, maybe even 10 days. But I am expecting more growth today than the last few days, mainly because of these clear skies. So I see somebody said, well, we have aircraft from LA helping this year. I'm not totally sure about that. If anybody else knows, please comment in the live chat. But something else that I do want to do is, let's turn on fire activity. We want that. Let's take a wider view of the overall west and just see, let's go regional sectors. Let's just see if there's any other fires popping up in California that we haven't talked about recently. So, you can see the smoke from the Mosquito Fire right there. Not seeing anything really else in Southern California. Let's check out Washington and Oregon, because I have heard there's been some massive wildfires going on up there, and it does look like we have a lot of smoke in that area, just kind of hovering around there. Right off the bat, though, not seeing any big smoke plumes. So let's try this map, and this might make it a little bit easier to see if there's any activity going on. So again, this is going to be kind of more exploratory. So looks like we have Cedar Creek Fire right here. Seeing some red on that. So now what we can do is go up and kind of orient ourselves to check out this Cedar Creek Fire. Looks like it's this one. Yeah, Cedar Creek incident. So it looks like this is in Oregon. Again, this is kind of what these Wildfire Insider videos are about. This is kind of my research process to figure out what the top wildfire story is of the day. So right now, I don't exactly even know where this is going, but we're just going to figure it out together. And if you have more information than I do on this kind of stuff, let me know in the live chat, and we can all kind of work together to figure out what's going on. So Cedar Creek incident, wow, it looks like this one's up to 90,000 acres, 0% contained. This is actually the first time that I've looked at it, because I usually don't look out of California because, I've lived in California my whole life. I'm a broadcast meteorologist on the Central Coast, and California is basically my home, and that's where I have the most interest and where I'm kind of focusing my efforts. But California overall actually looking pretty good right now, except for the fact that I'm expecting more growth on the Mosquito Fire today than yesterday, but below average temperatures for the next 10 days. So let's actually go check out the Cedar Creek incident. Looks like it's 90,000, 0% contained. Right here looks like we have some of those red dots, which show some of that recent activity. Let's see if there's any GOES detection showing heat right now. So when I turn on GOES detections, that's the more recent heat coming off of it. And that's actually where there's some good news, not seeing any heat as of right now. So the red dots are kind of hotspots in the last 24 hours. GOES detections will be hotspots in the last like 15 minutes. I believe that's how often that satellite's updated. And we're not seeing anything right there. So that would be some good news when it comes to the Cedar Creek fire. Now the other thing that we can do, hopefully we're done with this map right here. Actually, I might want to show that again at some point. So I'm going to leave that open. And let's just open up a new INCI page to check out the Cedar Creek fire. So zooming out, we're going to go on up to Oregon. This looks to be the biggest fire going on right now. Go to incident. Yeah, it looks like it's 92,548 acres. And, oh, I think they have a progression map. This would be a great thing to look at, especially because I haven't followed this fire before. So this will show us kind of where the most activity has been recently, especially since I don't have the Google Earth data for this one yet. So where that green color is, that's going to be where the fire originated. Where the red color is, that's going to be where the fire burned more recently. And we can actually see the dates on this. So, wow, interesting. This is a pretty old fire. So I'm looking down here. It looks like it started August 4th and it grew to 827 acres. And then it looked like there wasn't all that much growth for a long period of time. From August 12th until August 16th, it only grew a few hundred acres. And then up until September 4th, it was at 17,000 acres. Oh, wow. So this one has really blown up just in the last week. So in September 4th, it was 17,000 acres. And then on the 5th, it jumped up to 18,000. On the 7th, it jumped up to 27. On the 7th, it went up to 31. Then on the 8th, it went up to 33. 9th, 51. And then 10th, 85,000 acres. So if just numbers wasn't really all that informative, you can just look at the map and see what happened here. So we had all this kind of minimal growth for a very long period of time. Started August 4th on, what is this again? Cedar Creek fire. Actually, I'm going to double check and make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, Cedar Creek fire. Coming back in here. So it wasn't doing all that much. And then in the last 3 days, it has just completely taken off. And that explains why we've seen so much smoke over Oregon over the last few days. So let's zoom in here. And I'm not seeing any black dots on here. Usually the black dots when you're looking at it overnight is where there's a lot of wildfire activity. Looks like right there. I would guess that that's our Cedar Creek fire going on. So it does look like there's maybe a little smoke picking up this afternoon, but looks like we also have some cloud cover in that area. And then, so I'm trying to just check out the live chat. I see there's been a lot of notes on here. Yeah, it looks like hopefully some people are answering each other's questions. I'm always pretty bad at keeping an eye on what's actually going on in the live chat. So Cedar Creek fire. Let's check out what they're actually saying about it. We have 1,260 personnel on this fire. Fire is currently burning with moderate to low intensity, so that's some good news. Typical fire characteristics are backing and flanking, downhill with occasional torching when fire gets established, and jackpots under mature trees. Weather concerns, overcast skies and scattered showers passed over the fire area early this morning. So that's actually something that we're looking at right here. We had those overcast skies, some smoke lingering, maybe even a few scattered showers. Relative humidity recovery was very good with light rain and reached up to 90%. So that's where you get a lot of moisture moving in overnight, really calms the fire down. And then skies cleared in the late morning with smoky conditions lingering over the area. Slight chance of thunderstorms, partly cloudy. Yeah, overall, I'd say looking that all that information sounds a bit better. I know it has been very warm and dry up in Oregon and Washington, so something else we could do. We take the latitude and longitude of this fire, and let's actually see what the forecast is looking like today, because that's going to pretty much tell us how active this fire is going to be this afternoon. So zooming on up to the Cedar Creek fire, a lot of humidity right now, so that's certainly helping us out. Then this just gives us the snapshot. Wow, temperatures just staying in the 60s today, so that'd be some great news right there. Let's look at the temperature. Yeah, temperatures in the 60s. Then looking at relative humidity, a lot of moisture over the fire. So I'd say overall, even though we had that exceptional growth on the Cedar Creek fire in the last few days, looks like things are trending in the right direction. Then if we look at tomorrow, looks like a lot of moisture sticking around tomorrow afternoon as well. And then into Thursday, same story again. So while the Cedar Creek fire absolutely exploded in the last few days, looks like we're moving in the right direction, and I would imagine some of these red dots that we still see on there are going to be dying down over the next couple of days, and it looks like it's actually been dying down already. So I would say that seems to be our top two stories for today, Mosquito Fire and Cedar Creek Fire. If anybody's new to the live chat or the live stream, I can just do the quick summary on the Mosquito Fire, because based on the conditions over Cedar Creek, I would say that one's actually looking a lot better now. Apologies for completely missing that over the last few days while it was taking off, but again, my focus is always on California. Now let's just do a summary of everything that we learned about the Mosquito Fire. Now, one thing actually clicking out here, that's the remnants of Hurricane K, which has been affecting California's weather for the last, seems like about a week now. It's been continuing to push in moisture into California, and that's actually been helping us out significantly on the Mosquito Fire. Now, this is where things change compared to the last few days, and you can actually see it change throughout the course of this satellite imagery. You notice all those clouds over the Mosquito Fire overnight, and really over the last few days, are finally starting to move out. All that thunderstorm activity is going to be moving towards Nevada, and we're trending towards clearer skies over the Mosquito Fire, and you can already see the effect that that's having on fire activity. Looks like we have more of a smoke plume right now than we have had in previous days. Now, to confirm that, we can actually look at it from the ground. You see those clouds moving out, and then you see the fire activity picking up. The reason that's important is because as the clouds move out, you could pick up more sunlight. More sunlight, it gets warmer. As it gets warmer, it gets drier. And then as it gets warmer and drier, your winds pick up. Or as it gets warmer, your winds pick up. And then with all of that, it means fire activity picks up as well. So I am expecting more activity on the Mosquito Fire than in previous days. But the big thing that we figured out was when we actually looked at the weather conditions today on the Mosquito Fire. So just going to have to take a quick little detour right here for 1 second. We need the latitude and longitude of the Mosquito Fire because we want to show that weather forecast. So go to incident. Because the weather forecast is really the most important thing to tell us how this fire is going to behave throughout the day today. And I think that is actually the most important part of the story. Come in here. Let's go to the Mosquito Fire. And I'll actually just leave this bar up because it tells you what's going on. Looks like max temperature today, about mid 70s, maybe some low 80s depending on where you are on this fire. And then relative humidity just going to be getting down into the 20s to 30s. So overall, not that hot and not that dry. And when we looked at the overall snapshot of California, actually expecting below average temperatures for the next 5 to even 10 days. Looks like temperatures are going to be cooler in California than you would expect for this time of the year. So that's going to help us when it comes to fire danger. Now with that being said though, we do have those clearing skies today. So we are expecting more growth. I'm just not expecting one of those exceptional growth days where we get over 10,000 acres burned. Because temperatures mid 70s, that's a whole lot better than the triple digits we had last week. Relative humidity in the 20s and 30s, that's a whole lot better than the single digits to low teens that we had in previous days as well. Now the one factor that I think is few factors are going to lead to more activity throughout the day today. One are those clearer skies that'll allow the inversion to lift earlier. The other one, we do have some 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gusts throughout the day today. And you notice the direction those are coming from the southwest. And that gives us a snapshot of the direction that we're expecting the mosquito fire to move throughout the day today. So if we zoom in here, let's look at the activity. Right now, most of that activity on the northeastern section. Big reason for that, if we look at our winds, that's exactly the direction the winds are trying to push this fire. And it looks like that's just going to actually be picking up over the next couple of hours. So I'm expecting to see some growth towards the north. Now the good news is that if you look at this finger right here, that's some of the successful firing operations that they've been putting in place while we've had some more favorable conditions. Almost think of that as like building a wall to seal this fire in. So if the fire does push over here, a lot of these fuels have already been cleared out by their firing operations, so hopefully it would just stop this fire in its tracks. I think they actually call this a catcher's mitt. It almost catches the fire when it moves in here. And the other reason that we're looking good on that section is look at the completed dozer line that they have in this area. So it's not only that firing operation that stretches up like that, they have this dozer line stretching all the way up here. So even though we're forecasting fire growth in this area of the fire, they've been putting in a lot of work recently to really kind of prepare for when this fire starts to pick up again. Now, when I say they've been starting to prepare, I want to say that that is the 2,675 personnel on this fire. A lot of people doing a lot of good work. And then just when it comes to the numbers itself, we're almost up to 50,000 acres, 18% containment, and then there are still some evacuation warnings and orders. So I put the links for those in the description of this video. If you go to InSeeWeb, there's the links right there. So if you're a local, those are always good things to stay updated with. I never really show the evacuation orders and warnings because by the time you're watching this, they might have changed. But overall, with the mosquito fire, I'd say I'm not expecting any exceptional growth over the next 10 days because it looks like, at least with all the information I've been able to collect so far, that the wildfire situation doesn't look nearly as bad as when we were in that heat wave just about a week ago. Although the fuels are exceptionally dry, we do have those clearing skies throughout the day today. So I am expecting more activity today. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on things. I think I'm actually going to wait to do, this is how I usually do things. It's this video where I'm really just trying to figure out what's going on, and then looking at the live chat, we can all kind of figure it out together. It's almost kind of a group collaboration to try to figure out what's going on with wildfire in California. And then I produce a roughly 10-minute video where I go in depth on what I think is the top story of the day, and then a 2-minute video, which is just the very concise version that people can watch if they don't have any time to watch a 10-minute video or this one, which might even be up to an hour at this point. So I'm going to wait to do those until later this afternoon because I want to see just how active we get. But then until then, I'll continue to do some updates on Twitter where if I don't have as much as much time to make a full video, then I'll just do short updates on Twitter telling you guys the most important information you need to know. So if you want to stay updated, you can subscribe to this channel on YouTube, or you could follow Holt Hanley Wildfire Forecasting on Twitter. And yeah, overall, I think this was a successful Wildfire Insider. I think we kind of figured out what was going on across the state, and then I'll have more information for all of you later today and really throughout the entire rest of this wildfire season. So I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.